Welcome back, everyone, and thanks for joining us for this very special session in Fireside Chat, looking at future mobility and how it will impact on the supply chain. I'm Christopher Ludwig, Editor-in-Chief here at Automotive Logistics. And as we've been discussing across this event, of course, this is a time of great supply chain transformation. And I think one of the things that's most exciting about it are the range of new mobility and vehicle solutions that we're seeing start to emerge in the market with new players as well. In many ways, I think the crisis is also set to accelerate and change aspects of this too. Here in the UK, one of the most interesting companies to come onto the scene in the mobility sector is Arrival. If you've seen any of its designs, you'll know this is not your average bus or van. We're talking about beautiful human-centric designs and really next-gen EV technology. But, it won't be your average supply chain either. There's some really ambitious plans for a distributed manufacturing model and also for it to come pretty soon as well. The company has been working with some key partners and investors, including Hyundai-Kia, and is considered among one of the most valuable UK mobility startups. So I'm very pleased to welcome Tracey Yi, who's the CEO of Arrival's Elements, a newly established division of the company, which we'll be hearing about really soon. So thank you for joining us, Tracey.
Thank you for having me, Christopher.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Tracey, since Arrival is new for a lot of people and not least for our audience, why don't you start by giving us a brief overview of the company and what stage it's at in its development?
Sure. So Arrival R&D was founded about 5 years ago here in the UK. We currently have over 1,100 full-time employees. And as you mentioned, we really find ourselves in this unique position of being labeled one of the unicorns. It's been super exciting. We are working really hard to bring a whole host of sustainable solutions by way of our commercial electric vehicles, which I'm sure we're going to talk about. Earlier this year, we were thrilled to have the attention of Hyundai and Kia Motor Company. They came in, lots of meetings, due diligence, and they were excited enough about what we were doing that they invested 100 million euros with us. And around the same time, we agreed to a partnership with UPS, and that is looks like a 10,000 van order with an option for another 10,000. So I think that makes us quite unique for a startup that nobody's really heard of, for us to have that kind of support and recognition from a tier one OEM, as well as a really exciting order book.
Absolutely, and companies, of course, moving and transforming themselves, and great to see Arrival getting a chance to be a part of that so early in its sort of arrival, so to say.
Yeah.
You obviously come on to lead the Elements division, so let's talk a bit about that. What is Elements? What does it cover?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we can't, before I can talk about Elements, I think one of the core strategies for Arrival is we're very vertically integrated. So it means that even now, about 60% of the vehicle parts that go into our finished product is Arrival owned, Arrival IP. Right. So we own the whole vertical stack, hardware, software. And obviously you can imagine the impact that has on our supply chain. But Arrival Elements is the organization that takes the hardware core components that's designed by our R&D technology group, and we commercialize it. And we commercialize it, and it goes inside the vehicles that we build ourselves. So I'm a supplier to myself, that makes sense. And we will obviously be selling those, hopefully externally to other companies as well.
So that's quite a unique supply chain organization from compared to, I think, some of the companies we'll be talking to or we're interacting with at this event. So really interesting to see that vertical integration and commercial aspect of it. It makes me wonder if maybe it gives a chance to view the supply chain a bit differently, a bit more strategically, perhaps even.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everybody wants that. That you want to be in control of much of your supply chain as possible. We live in a global world. We buy internationally, and it makes sense to go with wherever the greatest talent is. I think we're all living. We're not able to attend this conference in person. We're doing this online. all for the same reason. COVID is a reality for all of us. It's not a problem that happens in one part of the world where you say, oh, what a shame, and then move on. It's really brought it for us. And actually, I think we got a bit lucky because as a company, because our strategy is to rely on ourselves so much, and be so vertically integrated and rely on local supply base, it's been a bit reaffirming. We feel very lucky, and it was reaffirmed for us that we're doing the right thing for local economies, but also from a business perspective, it makes us much more sustainable, I think.
It's an interesting point. I mean, right from the beginning of this crisis in the automotive industry, it set off lots of discussions around supply chain resilience, localization, regionalization, whether it was dependence on China or whatever region it was. So, I can imagine this is quite a forging event in the birth of a new company. Does that change? Do you think that changes quite a bit for how you see the future compared to even 6 months ago?
I think everybody is having to kind of get a clean sheet of paper and redefine what is going to make sense for you. And we did that quite openly, so as a team, we were lucky, again, so to speak, because we weren't in full production. So when COVID hit, our products weren't being held at borders because, as many of the audience will know, it was really kind of health, health equipment, et cetera, that were prioritized. So a lot of things that we would have needed for our vehicle parts would have been held up, and supply chains all over the world have been delayed. So when all this was happening, we were still very much in prototype stage. So, and typically when you are in prototype stage, you're buying in very small volumes and relying on local supply base. And so it really didn't impact us as a team in the office. Obviously, our founder was very proactive. He asked all of us to work from home long before here in the UK, our Prime Minister asked us to do so. And for those people who, because they're engineers, they're build engineers, they needed to be in our R&D sites, we prioritized those people and gave them the space to do that. So we were able to, I think, weather that storm relatively well. And all of us kind of sat down and looked and said, okay, here's our plan about how we're going to manage our supply chain and logistics and warehousing, and what do we need to redraw. And it's just, again, reaffirmed for us that doing what we needed to do, what we thought was the right thing to do, was to rely on local supply base, and to support local economies, hire local talent. All of those things actually work in our favor. So that's been really positive.
I mentioned at the top, and you've alluded to it with the local supply bases. Arrival has an interesting strategy when it comes to, or plans an interesting strategy when it comes to manufacturing. Can you tell us a little bit about the microfactory plan and maybe give us how this is going to work?
I love talking about it because I think it is the very unique thing about it. You think about automotive manufacturing, and they plan kind of 3-4 years in advance, hundreds of millions in investment, and they go out and find tons of space, hundreds of millions of square meters, to build one model that perhaps serves multiple markets across the world. It's not dynamic, regardless of what sector you are, right? Everything is about being agile and being able to respond to your market. So our microfactories are we call them, microfactories, there you go. It's very small. It's about 10,000 square meters. People who are listening in the old schools, it's about 100,000 square feet. And we can build them very quickly. We can take typical warehousing space, but we're not having to dig down and create pits or anything like that. And we can build them near the city centers where the volume would serve. So it's very near the customer base. And we can put one up very quickly, and again, utilize the local supply base for that. We're able to go small because we are, again, kind of showing our true colors, which is, I think we're much more of a technology company than pure automotive, is, you don't have the kind of these long lines of vehicles being made. It's very grid-based structure. And the really exciting part, and it's robo-factoring. So a very large part of our vehicle, and eventually all of our vehicle, will be built by robots. So that makes it incredibly exciting for us, and I think what makes us quite unique.
Absolutely. I mean, the common sort of refrain in the supply chain now is economies of scale, and obviously the basis around that. So I think there's a vision in the automotive industry to get to something like what Arrival is planning. But is it as you said, you think it's because of the volumes and the specific targeting that allows you to perhaps get there sooner, rather than in the future?
Yeah, I think, again, we have the advantage of starting fresh, right? Big established OEMs, it's like turning the Titanic, right? I always talk about, so in supply chain language, everybody wants 4.0, everybody wants warehousing automation and all of that. And why do virtually nobody really, truly, you may have the odd robot, but truly don't have it? It's because you cannot press pause button, stop all orders, stop business without losing customers, and find all this money to reinvest to get yourself to 4.0. So people do this kind of little bit here and a little slowly, right? And it's not fit for purpose. What we're able to do, because we didn't have a big mammoth manufacturing site that we're trying to utilize, because we could do it from scratch, you say, so how should we do it? Right. So I think that's a wonderful luxury. And I think all the engineers and the thinkers and the strategists within Arrival have just taken up that challenge and said, yeah, let's go for it.
Absolutely. So how would you envision the supply chain that serves these? I mean, clearly we're talking about as many local suppliers as possible.
Yeah.
Is there also some aspects that are consolidated elsewhere centrally? Just if you could, not down to the nuts and bolts, but just if you can give us a sense of kind of what that shape might look like.
Yeah, so absolutely, we will look for supply base. I mean, it just makes sense, right? It's cheaper, it's local, and we've already talked about COVID, right? It supports us for all of those things. There will be some components, because of its kind of the complexity and the time it took for development, where there will be a global partner. But whenever we're in that situation and we're in the prototype stage and we're working in development with those suppliers, we really explore what local manufacturing capabilities they have. So regardless of who we're working with at the inception, at the creative stage, at the development stage, actually we have suppliers locally who can, who are their partners, or who are actually just a local office or a local manufacturing site for that company that we can partner with. It doesn't mean we're not, look, we're not going to have any parts being flown in, but there is lots of rigor internally for us to say, okay, prove to me that there are no other options, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So our starting default is we're going local, and if absolutely we can't, and that's when we're looking at global options.
Absolutely. Well, maybe you won't be melting iron ore on the site there, but I'm sure it sounds really interesting that a lot of the technology will indeed be able to come locally.
Well, you joke, and I kind of was laughing with you. Most of our vehicles are made with aluminum chassis, but our ambition is to one day be 100. Not one day, like far, far away. Yeah. One day, we want to be 100% fully integrated. So we may be having a bit of boundaries, etc.
Yes. It's again, you said it right at the beginning, but it is fascinating, the integrated model and the approach to go that way. I still imagine you'll work with some suppliers.
Of course.
Obviously, not least with just even with the companies you mentioned earlier, the Hyundai-Kias and the UPS has become kind of suppliers. So those partnerships will still matter in places, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the materials that you have developed, and not least because you're planning to commercialize and sell some of these as well. I understand that you're targeting sustainable materials. So can you give us some examples of what those are from a, from a technological point of view and their advantages?
Okay. One of the other vertically integrated parts about our vehicles is our composites. For exterior A surface and B surface. And so a good example of a sustainable material that we use is the thermoplastic composite materials, which are 100% recyclable. So, we have loads of incredible engineers who have invented this stuff. And I think it's just a win if you could have a product that does what it needs to do. And as a supply chain person, at the price you need it to do it, right? High performance, fully integrated. And then it's, again, designed for purpose because we designed it ourselves to ask ourselves the question, how can we design something right from the front end that is recyclable? So that's what we have with that product.
So we're talking about a lot of recyclable, renewable materials and things like that. Great. Yeah. What about, we talk in this conference, we've been talking already about it, green supply chain, sustainability in the supply chain. Clearly, that's an example in terms of the materials as well.
Of course.
But do you also aim to, make other elements of the supply chain more sustainable and green?
Yeah. I think when you're in the electric vehicle space, it's not something that you can ignore and wait till the end and pull together a corporate social responsibility packet, right? So obviously, our vehicles by nature will kind of help decarbonize the transport sector. So I think that is a big contribution, I guess, in that space. I guess I'm mindful about kind of over-promising on all kinds of things when the reality is you're not a help to anybody if you can't get electric vehicles out there, right? At the end of the day. So another area that we're doing a lot of work in is packaging in automotive manufacturing. The packaging that parts come in is big, complex, and very expensive. And we are 100% recyclable on all of our packaging from suppliers. So that's another way that we're going to try to contribute to the space.
That is very relevant, and again, we'll have many in our audience who will be interested to, I'm sure, discuss some of that as well. I should just point out to our audience now that Tracey will be part of a live Q&A that follows. So keep putting your questions through, and we'll come and we'll do some live Q&A with the audience as well. But I'm taking my time selfishly to ask the questions that I want, and so thank you again to Tracey for doing that. Let's skip ahead just a little bit though. Let's sort of imagine it's 2025 now. Maybe by then we can even meet. So let's imagine we're on a stage. I'm sure it's still broadcasting to the world, via such platforms. But now, what can we say about the supply chain for Arrival then, and perhaps especially for the Elements division as well? What's the most important things that will have happened by then?
Yeah, well, I'm going to wear my chief executive hat of Elements first and answer that question. One of the most exciting things about being asked to kind of take on this role is I know what we're doing for our products in terms of delivering the core components. But I have our ambition is to help accelerate the electrification program across other kind of small and medium-sized OEMs. Not everybody will have the kind of capital investment, the time to be able to kind of design all of the core components that we have. And because we have an array of kind of heavy duty, lightweight vehicles, they have great crossover application for a lot of vehicles. So I imagine a small company somewhere, in Poland, they build, garbage trucks. They're going into city centers and everyone is asking them to electrify and they're terrified that because they can't afford to do it. I'd like to be able to say, hey, lift the top hat and we'll sell you the whole, modular kit and we can help accelerate that for you. So it's not just for us, but it could have greater application. If you kind of fast forward a little bit more, I imagine a day, say you inherit a very well-loved family car from your grandparents, and you and your daughter just love this car, and it absolutely doesn't run. And you decide to take a summer project and you rip it apart and you say, you know what, let's keep the outside and let's buy. I remember that woman, Tracey. I think she said she had core components. We could sell you the whole kit, and you could use it yourself. So I'd like to see a time, maybe not even that far away, where there is not just a B2B but a B2C component to our business. And that's really exciting for me.
Well, I'll have to start hinting to my grandfather to what he should do with his Cadillac, so that I have some ideas for the future on that. Yeah, well, I'll have a couple more minutes with you here, Tracey. It's interesting kind of that, a lot of this conference, we're talking about electrification. We are talking about electric vehicles, but actually, your company is one of the key ones we're talking about in terms of the commercial vehicle side of it, and it's interesting. I mean, do you see that as the next stage of really development in electrification now, in terms of, whether it's heavy trucks or buses and stuff, and what do you think is kind of going to drive that now in the next couple of years that's relevant for a while?
Yeah, I think, one of the story kind of the founder of our company, Dennis, told me is he said, when he arrived in the UK and he was on the roads and he couldn't believe all the traffic, and they're all commercial vehicles. Right. So yes, all of us have seen real growth. Every major OEM is playing, not just dabbling, seriously playing in the electric market. I think the consumers are demanding that. And I think as an individual, you can say, well, I'm happy to pay the 40% premium or whatever it is for my beliefs. And because from the total cost perspective, I'm happy to pay that money up front and I will make it back in the end. But if you think about commercial vehicles and publicly listed companies who are spending hundreds of millions of pounds and dollars a year to renew their fleet, despite what their shareholders say, it makes a really difficult business case because of the cost of electric commercial vehicles. So I think it's a sector that's very small, and it has been kind of left to whoever was in there to kind of dictate the price and the type of products that were available. So I think it seems obvious for us because we're in that space. And why isn't anybody else doing it? Surely other people are doing it in a much more kind of deliberate way. We are starting with commercial vehicles. So I think, like everything, to make real change, to really have more electric vehicles on the road, it can't be just for the select few in the consumer market. You have to find a wider application. So I hope that we see more companies doing the same.
Well, I mean, again, we talked about COVID before, but certainly the crisis, but certainly one of the, as if e-commerce wasn't growing enough before, it's obviously been so important in the development since. And
absolutely.
I think partnerships with companies like UPS must also tell us quite a bit, right, about what the future direction of the logistics sector, where it's going.
Absolutely, and many of your audience is definitely true for me. Over the last 3 months, the person I saw the most regularly was my delivery guy, who was delivering whatever I was buying off online. So yeah, and they are going into city centers, and all across the world, cities are getting smart about, they're first starting with certain zone areas or certain times of the day, and more. There are very aggressive deadlines as to when streets and whole areas, postcode areas, need to be green, so to speak. So I think we are just riding a part of that wave. So yeah.
Well, absolutely, and that's an exciting part of what we're going to continue to discuss in this event, and actually shortly, I think some of our audience who belong to that sector will want to pose some questions to you on that. So a lot more to discuss and develop. But Tracey, I want to thank you for sharing that with us now. It's an exciting time for Arrival, and quite an exciting time for you too. I believe you're fairly new in the role. That's correct, right?
I am. I've only been with the company about a year, a little short of a year. So yes, it's an absolute ride. I was interviewing some people this week because obviously we're still hiring and we're growing. And they're like, so what is it like working there? And I said, it's kind of, I feel like it's everything that I've tried to learn, and every experience, professional experience and personal, in terms of resilience. And it was all for this moment, not to kind of make this bigger than it is. But, we all feel like we're doing something really important. And we're all sleep deprived, and we all kind of say, well, like, we'll sleep when this is over. I feel very fortunate to be with Arrival.
Those are some key words: growing at this time. I don't mean to flood your inbox, but I will draw that attention to our audience on that fact, that Arrival is growing and obviously looking for talent, supporting talent. So I'm sure there's potentially opportunities and people who can help us along the way. So we're really glad that we can help make that connection deeper into the automotive supply chain space, and to welcome a new entrant. I'm not going to keep doing the Arrival joke. A new entrant, it's got to get old at some point, right? Because I'm really excited to see how the old and the new mix together here.
Yeah, great.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again, Tracey. So, and thank you again to our audience. So we're going to take a short break, and we'll be back soon. Tracey will join us for some live Q&A. So you hopefully keep putting your questions through, and we'll have a few more to go through then as well. And we look forward to that. Thanks to everyone again. And don't forget to visit our sponsor e-booths, and we'll see you soon.